So here's the thing about the Galactic Council. They think they're pretty hot stuff. 10,000 species, all working together in harmony, sharing knowledge, promoting understanding, blah blah blah, they've seen it all. Wars, plagues, dimensional rifts, you name it. But then humans show up, and suddenly everything they know is wrong. Ambassador Krell was your typical council representative. Tall, purple, way too many eyes, and absolutely convinced that protocol could solve any problem. He'd been assigned to the human portfolio for exactly 3 months, and had already filed 17 incident reports. Not because humans were hostile. Oh no, that would have been easier. Humans were just, well, humans. Captain Jessica Torres had been the human liaison for 2 years. 2 very long years. She'd explained human handshakes, human humor, human food, and why humans insist on keeping predators as pets. She was tired. So very tired. "Ambassador Krell," she said, reading the latest memo on her tablet. "You want to do what now?" "Observe human juvenile recreational activities," Krell announced, all 4 hands clasped behind his back in what he probably thought was an authoritative pose. "The Council believes that understanding how humans socialize their young will provide insight into your species' unusual characteristics." Torres pinched the bridge of her nose. "You want to watch kids play soccer? If that is the term for the ritual combat training, yes. It's not combat training. It's a game. Your young engage in physical confrontation for amusement." "Oh boy," Torres muttered. "Okay, listen. This is a bad idea. A really bad idea. Captain Torres, I have observed 17 species youth development programs. I am prepared." She looked at him, really looked at him, at his perfectly pressed diplomatic robes, his meticulously organized data pad, his expression of complete confidence. "Sure," she said finally. "Yeah, you're totally prepared. Let's go ruin your week." The soccer field was in suburban Ohio. Because of course it was. Saturday morning, 9 a.m., and the parking lot was already full of minivans and SUVs. Parents were unloading folding chairs, coolers, and children who were vibrating with barely contained energy. Krell stepped out of the transport vehicle, followed by Dr. Vinny, a 4-armed scientist whose species had won 3 Nobel Prizes, and Garth, a security officer who looked like someone had given a Boulder anger issues and a uniform. "This is the location," Vanek asked, scanning the field with multiple devices. "This is it," Torres confirmed. "Recreational soccer, ages 8 to 10. Completely normal Saturday morning. The atmospheric conditions are acceptable," Garth rumbled, hand resting on his weapon. "Perimeter appears secure. It's Ohio, not a war zone." "Is there a difference?" Krell asked, reviewing his briefing notes. "You know what? Fair point." Torres gestured toward the field where 2 teams were warming up. "Okay, ground rules. Don't interfere. Don't panic. And when I say something is normal, believe me that it's normal. Captain, we are trained observers of countless civilizations." "Right. And I'm trained in writing incident reports. Let's see which skill gets more use today." The ref blew the whistle. The game began. Krell activated his recording device. Observation log, start at 41,853. Human juveniles are assembling in designated combat zones. They appear enthusiastic, perhaps overly so. Note the complete absence of protective armor, despite the clearly physical nature of the activity. "It's soccer, not gladiatorial combat," Torres said. "We shall see," Krell replied ominously. He had no idea how right he was. The first 10 minutes were actually okay. Krell was taking notes. Vanek was scanning the children's biometrics. Garth was glaring at everyone suspiciously, but that was just his face. Torres was starting to think maybe, just maybe, this would be fine. Then the ball hit little Emma Rodriguez directly in the face. The sound echoed across the field, a solid thwack that made every parent wince. In sympathy, Emma stumbled backward, hands flying to her nose. "Medical emergency," Krell shouted, reaching for his communicator. Request immediate evacuation for injured juvenile. Wait. Torres grabbed his arm. Just watch. Emma's nose was bleeding. Pretty good, too. Red drops spattering on her yellow jersey. Her eyes were watering. She looked at the blood on her hands, sniffled, and then, impossibly, she wiped her nose on her sleeve and kept playing. What? Fennec whispered, all 4 eyes wide. What is she doing? Playing soccer, Torres said calmly. She's injured. She's hemorrhaging facial fluids. It's just a bloody nose. Happens all the time. All the time. Krell's translator implant sparked. This is routine childhood trauma. I mean, yeah, kids are basically made of rubber and chaos. On the field, Emma had just stolen the ball from the other team. Blood was still dripping from her nose. She was grinning. I need to document this, Fennec muttered, fingers flying over his datapad. Human juvenile pain tolerance exceeds all known parameters. Possible genetic modification. Combat conditioning from birth. Or, and hear me out, kids are just tough and also kinda dumb about injuries. That's not scientifically possible. Welcome to Earth, where nothing makes sense and the safety regulations are made up. The game continued. Krell was no longer taking notes in an organized fashion. He was just staring, his expression cycling between horror and fascination. Garth had moved closer to Torres, as if being near the human might somehow help him understand what he was witnessing. Then they met Danny Martinez. Danny was 8 years old, maybe 70 pounds soaking wet, and played soccer like he was personally angry at the ball. He didn't run so much as attack the ground with his feet. When he got the ball, other kids scattered. That one appears more aggressive than the others, Garth observed. That's Danny. He's had 4 juice boxers this morning. Is that significant? You have no idea. Danny collided with a kid from the other team. Not maliciously. Not even really on purpose. Just 2 small humans operating at full speed with absolutely no concept of consequences. They crashed together with a sound like someone dropping a bag of hammers. Both kids went down. Krell made a noise that his translator couldn't process. Fennec dropped his datapad. Garth drew his weapon. Holster that. Torres snapped. They're fine. They're not fine. They just sustained massive kinetic trauma. And then, because the universe has a sense of humor, both kids got up. They looked at each other. Danny grinned, showing a gap where he'd lost a tooth last week. The other kid grinned back. They bumped fists and kept playing. I don't understand, Krell whispered. I don't understand anything anymore. Yeah, Torres said, pulling out her phone. I'm gonna order lunch. This is gonna take a while. How are they moving? The impact force should have resulted in significant skeletal damage. Kids are basically boneless until they're like 16. It's a whole thing. That's not how biology works. Tell that to the kids. On their field. Danny had the ball again. A defender tried to stop him. Danny juked left. The kid grabbed his jersey, and they both went down in a tangle of limbs. Parents on the sidelines were cheering. The ref wasn't even calling a foul. This is normal, Fennec asked weakly. Super normal. Your species allows this, encourages it. Actually, builds character, or whatever. Krell sat down heavily on a nearby bench. His perfect posture had abandoned him entirely. I have observed the training programs of warrior species. I have documented the endurance rituals of the Kragath. But this, human children engage in voluntary recreational violence. You should see hockey, Torres said cheerfully. What's hockey? Exactly. The ref blew the whistle. Halftime. Halftime should have been a break, a moment for everyone to catch their breath and regroup. Instead, it was when things got truly weird. The kids swarmed the sidelines where parents had laid out snacks. Orange slices, juice boxers, granola bars, and various other items that Fennec's scanner immediately flagged as problematic. Those contain concentrated sucrose, he said, watching a kid down a juice box in 3 seconds. and artificial coloring, and preservatives that are banned on 47 planets. Yeah, they're delicious, Torres said. They're toxic. They're like $1 a box. Economics beat toxicity. Danny grabbed 2 granola bars, a juice box, and what appeared to be a compressed fruit product of some kind. He consumed all of it in under a minute, barely breathing between bites. He's fueling for enhanced combat performance, Garth muttered. Smart. He's 8, and thinks sugar is a food group. Not that smart. Krell was watching a little girl named Sophie who had fallen earlier. Her knees were scraped raw, bits of grass and dirt embedded in the wounds. Her mom was spraying something from a bottle while Sophie stood there, eating an orange slice, completely unconcerned. What is that substance? Krell asked. Antiseptic spray. She's administering it in the field. Without anesthesia, it stings a little, but yeah. Sophie flinched as the spray hit her knee. Oh, she said. Then she took another bite of orange and asked if she could go back in. Approved, her mom said, slapping a Band-Aid on each knee. That's insufficient medical treatment, Krell shouted. Several parents turned to look at the purple alien having a breakdown. Torres waved apologetically. He's fine for an exchange thing. Those wounds require sterilization, tissue regeneration, and a minimum of 3 days recovery, or 2 cartoon Band-Aids in spite. Kids run on spite. That's not medically accurate, and yet, here we are. Sophie jogged back onto the field. The Band-Aids were already peeling off from sweat and movement. She didn't seem to notice or care. Venick had given up on scientific observation. He was now just making a list titled Things That Should Kill Human Children But Do UN. It was getting long. The ref blew the whistle. Second half was starting. Perhaps the worst is over, Krell said hopefully. Torres checked the sky. Dark clouds were rolling in from the west. Oh, buddy, she said, we're just getting started. The second half began with renewed intensity. The kids had metabolized their sugar intake and were now operating at what could only be described as feral velocity. Danny got the ball. 2 defenders tried to stop him. He went through them like they were traffic cones. A third kid stuck out a leg. Danny went down, rolled, and popped back up without missing a beat. That was a tactical roll, Guth exclaimed. Who taught him evasive maneuvers? YouTube, probably, Torres said. What's YouTube? A blessing and a curse. Thunder rumbled overhead. Parents were glancing at the sky. The ref was checking his weather app. The kids were completely oblivious, locked into their game. We should evacuate, Krell said, eyeing the darkening clouds. Lightning is extremely dangerous. You'd think so, wouldn't you, Captain Torres? I must insist we prioritize the children's safety. Tell it to the soccer moms. I dare you. A kid named Marcus collided with the goalpost going for a save. The hollow metal post made a deep bonging sound. Marcus bounced off, shook his head like a cartoon character, and stayed in position. Possible concussion, Venick shouted. We need to remove him from activity. His mom's an ER nurse, Torres said, nodding toward a woman who was barely looking up from her phone. If she's not worried, he's fine. How can you tell? She hasn't moved. When soccer moms stand up, that's when you worry. Ryan started. Not a gentle drizzle, a full Midwest downpour that turned the field into a mudslide within 60 seconds. The ref looked at the parents. The parents shrugged. The game continued. They're playing in a thunderstorm. Krell was beyond scientific observation now. He was just screaming observations. This is madness. This is Ohio, Torres corrected. The ball was now skidding unpredictably through puddles. Kids were slipping, falling, getting back up, covered in mud. One child executed a slide tackle that sent up a wave of water. Both teams cheered. Lightning flashed. Thunder followed 3 seconds later. 1 mile away, Venick calculated. We are in extreme danger. The kids scored a goal. Both teams celebrated, splashing in puddles. I want to go home, Garth whispered. I've faced enemy fire. I have survived orbital bombardment. But this is true fear. Welcome to Suburban Youth Sports, Torres said, filming everything on her phone. Nobody's gonna believe this without video evidence. The rain had transformed the soccer field into something between a swamp and a slip and slide. Reasonable species would have called the game. Humans, as the aliens were learning, were not reasonable. Danny had the ball again. Of course he did. The kid was everywhere, mud-covered and grinning like a maniac. He was dribbling toward the goal when a defender named Tyler came in for the tackle. They collided at full speed, both slipping on the wet grass. Tyler's elbow came up. Danny's face came down. Crack. The sound carried across the field, even over the rain. Every parent winced. The ref blew the whistle. Danny went down hard. Medevac. Now. Krell screamed into his communicator. Critical injury. Facial bone structure compromised. Torres didn't even look up from her phone. He's fine. His face made a breaking sound. Yeah, that happens. Danny was lying on his back in a puddle, hands covering his nose. Blood was mixing with rainwater, running down his face in pink streams. His mom, Mrs. Martinez, was already walking onto the field with a red cooler, completely undone. Vanek was frantically scanning. Multiple fracture indicators. Severe tissue trauma. He requires immediate surgical intervention. Mrs. Martinez knelt next to Danny. Let me see, baby. Danny moved his hands. His nose was bleeding profusely and already swelling. Mrs. Martinez pulled an ice pack from the cooler, cracked it to activate it, and pressed it to his face. Broken, the ref asked. Nah, just whacked good. He's had worse. Krell's translator was definitely malfunctioning now, adding random emphasis to everything. His older brother plays hockey. Mrs. Martinez explained to the ref as if this was somehow an answer that made sense. Give him a minute, the ref said, and play resumed around them. Then he sat up. Ice pack pressed to his face with one hand. His mom handed him a water bottle. He took a drink, spit out some blood, and looked up at her. Can I go back in? The aliens made simultaneous sounds of distress that the translator couldn't process. How's the pain? Scale of 1 to 10. Like a 6. You can play. This is child endangerment, Krell shouted. Several parents turned to stare. Mrs. Martinez looked at the purple alien. Tenet Doris. Eokai. Biokai. Culture shock. Don't worry about it. Danny stood up, wobbled slightly, then jogged back onto the field. The ice pack went back in the cooler. Play continued. The next data pad was smoking. Literally smoking. He'd overloaded it with contradictory information. My database cannot process this. Human juvenile sustains major cranial trauma, receives frozen water and maternal approval, returns to voluntary combat within 3 minutes. This violates every principle of biological preservation. Yeah, but did he look cool doing it? Torres asked. That's not relevant to survival. You'd be surprised how often cool-looking overrides survival instinct in humans. On the field. Danny had already recovered the ball and was charging toward the goal again, face still bleeding, nose visibly swollen. He scored. His team went wild. Kids piled on him, in celebration, completely ignoring his obvious injury. Danny was laughing, blood on his teeth, ice-cold rain pelting down. They're celebrating his injury tolerance, Garth said slowly. Human pack bonding is based on mutual survival of trauma, or they're just happy about the goal, Torres offered. No. I think I understand now. Garth straightened. Humans are a warrior species. You've just disguised your combat training as children's recreation. Brilliant. Terrifying, but brilliant. Sure, let's go with that. The game was winding down. 15 minutes left. Both teams were exhausted, muddy, and bleeding from various minor injuries. 2 aliens. It looked like a battlefield. To the parents, It looked like a successful Saturday. I need psychiatric evaluation after this, Krell muttered. I'm seeing everything I knew about survival, instinct, proven false. Join the club, Torres said. I grew up here and I still don't get it. Lightning struck close enough that the thunder was immediate. The ref finally looked concerned. But before he could call the game, a kid named Ashley scored from midfield, the ball arcing perfectly through the rain into the goal. The parents erupted in cheers. The ref shrugged and let them finish the last 3 minutes. They're cheering, Fennec whispered. In a lightning storm, celebrating an athletic achievement while in mortal danger. Priorities, Torres said. The final whistle blew. Kids from both teams collapsed onto the muddy field, exhausted and happy. Parents started gathering gear. Someone was already organizing snacks for next week. Danny walked past the aliens, ice packed back on his nose, trophy in his other hand, for scoring 3 goals. Good game, he said to them, grinning through the blood and swelling. Krell just stared at him. This tiny, injured, happy human child who'd just played a full soccer game with a broken nose in a thunderstorm. You people are insane, Krell whispered. Yeah, Danny agreed cheerfully, and walked off to find his mom. The field was clearing out. Kids were being loaded into cars, still bouncing with energy despite 45 minutes of what the aliens could only classify as combat operations. Parents were making plans for next week, discussing snack rotation and carpool schedules, acting like they hadn't just watched their offspring risk life and limb for a game. Krell was sitting on the muddy bench, his diplomatic robes ruined, his worldview shattered. Vanek was trying to reboot his datapad. Garth was reassessing every threat analysis he'd ever made about humanity. Torres was eating a granola bar she'd snagged from the snack table. So, she said cheerfully. Thoughts. I have several, Krell said slowly. Most of them involve questioning my career choices. A mom walked past, carrying a cooler and a kid who was limping. The kid was smiling. Excuse me, Vanek called out weakly. Your offspring appears injured. Oh yeah, twisted his ankle in the first half, the mom said casually. He played the entire game on a damaged limb. He wanted to finish. I told him to tell me if it got worse. And did it? Probably. But we won, so. She shrugged and kept walking. Vanek made a sound like a computer crashing. Danny's dad walked over, Danny trailing behind him, still holding his trophy. Mr. Martinez was a friendly guy, completely unaware that he was approaching 3 aliens in the middle of an existential crisis. Hey, you folks, enjoy the game. Enjoy is not the word I would use, Krell managed. Yeah, it was a rough one. Good intensity, though. He patted Danny on the shoulder. Danny winced, but grinned. Kid played great even after that hit. His nose may be fractured, Vanek said. Nah. If it was broken, we'd go to urgent care. This is just a good whack. Right, champ? Right. Danny agreed, voice nasal from the swelling. You people distinguish between types of facial fractures? Krell asked. Well, yeah. Broken's broken. But there's like broken where you can wait till Monday, and broken where you go to the ER. This is a Monday thing. Maybe I cannot comprehend your medical triage system. It's easy. If bone's sticking out, that's if they're crying for more than 5 minutes, that's urgent care. If they're saying they're fine, that's ice and monitoring. Torres was nodding along. See? Simple? That's not simple. That's nightmare logic. Mr. Martinez laughed. You should come watch when hockey season starts. Now that's a real contact sport. What, Garth said flatly, is hockey? Oh man, it's great. It's like soccer, but faster, more violent, and everyone's on knives. On knives. Ice skates. Sharp blades. Kids going 20 miles an hour on ice, hitting each other with sticks. You're describing a blood sport. I mean, there's usually not that much blood. They wear helmets and stuff. Usually? Bennick's voice cracked. Sometimes teeth happen. But that's part of the fun. Mr. Martinez was genuinely enthusiastic. Danny's starting hockey next month, aren't you, bud? Yeah, I'm gonna be a defenseman. Danny demonstrated a checking motion that made all three aliens flinch. Well, we gotta get going. Ease at this nose, maybe some ibuprofen. He'll be good as new. Nice meeting you folks. Mr. Martinez steered Danny toward their car. Krell watched them go. They're going to put him in a more violent sport. After today, they're escalating the danger. Builds character. Torres sighed. It builds funeral expenses. Actually, youth sports injuries are pretty rare. Serious-wise, lots of bumps and bruises, but kids are resilient. We just watched that child break his face, and he's fine. That's my point. A car honked cheerfully as it drove past. A kid in the back seat waved, arm in a sling from last week's game. Everyone waved back. I need to report this to the council, Krell said finally. They need to understand what we've witnessed. Good luck explaining it, Torres said. I've been trying for 2 years. How do you cope, knowing that your young are this fragile and this reckless simultaneously? Wine, mostly, and the knowledge that we all survived childhood. So statistically, they probably will too. That's not reassuring. It's not supposed to be. It's just parenthood. Sophie ran past, both knees still bleeding through her band-aids, asking her mom if they could get ice cream. Her mom said yes. The universe continued to make no sense. Vanek finally got his data pad working again. He pulled up his report. I've documented 17 separate injuries, 8 instances of continued activity, despite trauma, 4 examples of parental medical negligence by any civilized standard, and 0 instances of appropriate safety protocols. Sounds like a successful game, Torres said. How is your species not extinct? Spite and juice boxers, apparently. Garth was watching the last few families pack up. I understand now, he said quietly, why humans are feared. We're feared. Torres perked up. In certain circles, your military is concerning enough. But this, he gestured at the field. You train your young through voluntary combat. You teach them to ignore injury, to celebrate pain, to operate in dangerous conditions while maintaining enthusiasm. You're not raising children. You're raising warriors who don't know they're warriors. Or, Torres countered, we're raising kids who know how to fall down and get back up. Which, yeah, same result, different philosophy. You people terrify me. Cool. Want to grab lunch? There's a good taco place nearby. I've lost my appetite for the foreseeable future. More tacos for me. Krell stood up, muddy and defeated. Captain Torres, I need to file an emergency report to the council. This cultural observation has revealed significant concerns about human development. Protocols? Do you have to mention the part where you almost called in an airstrike for a bloody nose? I did not almost. Krell paused. I may have overreacted. You called it a medical emergency 3 times. It looked very serious. Yeah, well, welcome to Earth, where everything looks serious, but is apparently fine, and the things that are actually serious, nobody worries about. That's a terrible survival strategy. And yet, Torres spread her arms to indicate the entirety of human civilization still existing despite all evidence suggesting it shouldn't. They walked back to the transport vehicle. Behind them, the last families were leaving the field. Someone was already setting up cones for the next game starting in an hour. They're doing this again? Vanek asked. In 1 hour. With different children, different league, 12-2-14s. Dear ancestors, no. Wanna stick around and watch? All 3 aliens answered simultaneously. Nitrogen monoxide. Torres grinned. Yeah, didn't think so. The Galactic Council chamber was designed to be intimidating. High ceilings, crystal architecture. Seats for representatives from thousands of worlds. It was where the galaxy's most important decisions were made. Right now, it was completely silent. Krell stood at the central podium, looking significantly less polished than usual. His diplomatic robes had been cleaned, but retained a faint mud stain. His expression suggested someone who had seen things, terrible things, and had returned to warn the others. Let me make certain I understand correctly, Counselor Vex said slowly. She was the head of the Cultural Exchange Program, a dignified insectoid who had reviewed thousands of observation reports. You observed human juveniles engaging in their recreational activities. Yes, Counselor. And you are requesting emergency psychological support and a complete revision of our human safety protocols. Yes, Counselor. Because of a children's game. I tease not a game, Krell shouted, making his translator spark. The chamber stirred uncomfortably. Krell collected himself. I apologize, but I must emphasize, what we observed was highly disturbing. Chancellor Vex looked at her notes. Your report mentions multiple injuries. 17 documented cases. Yes. And how many required hospitalization? None. Technically. Fatalities. Also none. Then I failed to see the emergency. Krell's eye twitched. Venix stood up from the observers section. Counselor, if I may, I have medical scans. A juvenile sustained significant nasal trauma. Fracture indicators? Hemorrhaging. He received frozen water and returned to activity within 3 minutes. That's medically impossible, someone said from the back. That's what I said. Venix's professional composure finally cracked. But it happened. It happened, and everyone acted like it was normal. It is normal, Torres said from her seat. She'd been required to attend this emergency session, though she'd really rather be literally anywhere else. Captain Torres, Counselor, Vex said. Please enlighten us. Is Ambassador Krell's report accurate? Mostly, yeah. Though he's being dramatic about the frozen water thing, it was an ice pack. The child returned to athletic activity with a facial fracture. Maybe a small fracture. Honestly, probably just a really good hit. His mum's a nurse. She checked him out. A nurse is not a doctor. Yeah, but she's a mom, which is like a battlefield medic, with less equipment and more duct tape. The chamber erupted in confused discussion. Krell pulled up his recording device. Counselors, I have video documentation, with your permission. He activated the holographic display. The footage played. Emma taking the ball to the face. Danny's collision. Kids playing in the thunderstorm. The elbow to Danny's nose. The crack echoing through the chamber's sound system, followed by the absolutely insane sight of him returning to play minutes later. The chamber watched in stunned silence. Are those adults cheering? Someone asked. Those are parents, Torres confirmed. They're supportive. They're witnessing their offspring sustain injury. Character building. That's not how character building works. Counselor Vex paused the video on a freeze frame of Danny. Midrun, blood still visible on his face, grinning like a maniac. Captain Torres, is this typical of human childhood? I mean, soccer's pretty tame, actually. Tame? You should see football. American football. Not the rest of the world football, which is what you just watched. Though rugby's worse. Or hockey. Hockey's definitely worse. Or lacrosse. Kids swinging sticks at each other's heads. On purpose, Garth asked from his seat, sounding traumatized. Well, not supposed to, but yeah, kinda. A counselor from a species that looked like a floating jellyfish spoke up. I have reviewed human medical literature. Your young heal quickly, yes, but this level of trauma acceptance seems pathological. Or, Torres stood up, and hear me out. Here. We're just really good at knowing what's actually dangerous versus what looks dangerous. That's not a pathology. That's experience. Experience gained through repeated injury. Well, yeah, that's how learning works. Krell played another clip. Kids, celebrating in the rain, lightning visible in the background. They're playing in electrical storm conditions. Counselor Vex stated. It was just a little lightning, Torres said. Just a little lightning. Krell's translator was giving up entirely, adding random punctuation to his speech. You people have no concept of appropriate risk assessment. Sure we do. We just assess different. That storm was like What? A few miles away. Totally safe. The data shows lightning strike distance of less than 1 mile. Then it wasn't a direct hit, so we're good. The chamber descended into chaos. Representatives were arguing in multiple languages, translators struggling to keep up. Someone fainted, which was impressive since they were a gaseous species. Councillor Vex called for order. Eventually, something resembling quiet returned. "This council needs time to process this information," she said finally. "Captain Torres, are all human juvenile activities this concerning?" "Depends on your definition of concerning. We haven't even gotten into competitive cheerleading." "What's cheerleading?" "Gymnastics, but you throw the smaller kids really high and trust they'll come back down safely. You throw them like 20 feet up." "It's impressive." Krell sat down heavily. "I'm retiring," he announced, to no one in particular. "I'm going to return to my home world, cultivate plants, and never think about humans again." "That's fair," Torres said. "Captain Torres," Councillor Vex said carefully, "the council received another cultural exchange request. Human celebrations. Specifically," she checked her notes, "birthday parties with bounce houses." Torres pulled out her phone and started typing. "What are you doing?" Krell asked. "Resignation letter. You can't resign. You're the only human liaison who hasn't quit." "Yeah, because I haven't taken you to a kid's birthday party. That's where the real chaos is. Bounce houses are basically gladiatorial arenas with air pumps. Last month, a kid broke his arm. 2 got concussions from colliding and someone chipped a tooth on the exit slide." The party continued. Cake was served. Everyone had a great time. The chamber had gone very quiet. "Served cake," Councillor Vex repeated. "After multiple injuries. Ice cream cake. It was delicious." A junior councillor raised a tentacle. "Perhaps we should table the human cultural observations indefinitely." Seconded came from about 40 different representatives simultaneously. "All in favor?" Councillor Vex asked. The vote was unanimous. "So noted. New policy. All human childhood activities are to be classified as level 5 cultural hazards. Observation requires advanced psychological preparation, comprehensive medical support, and mandatory therapy sessions afterward. Ambassador Krell, you and your team are hereby granted immediate sabbatical with full psychological benefits." "Thank you, Counselor," Krell said weakly. "Captain Torres, please return to Earth and inform your people that we appreciate their participation, but will not be requesting further youth activity. Observations. Works for me." Torres stood to leave, then paused. "Although, if you ever want to see what happens when you give 30 kids cake and prizes and let them run around a closed space with minimal supervision. No. Just offering." She left the chamber. Behind her, the council was already discussing new human interaction protocols, trauma response teams, and whether they should just put a warning label on Earth's entire solar system. Krell watched her go. Vanek sat down beside him, looking exhausted. "Do you think they understand?" Vanek asked. "The humans. Do they know they're terrifying?" Krell thought about it. About Torres's casual attitude. About Mr. Martinez proudly talking about hockey. About Danny grinning through a broken nose. About an entire species that treated danger like a minor inconvenience. "No," he said finally. "I don't think they have any idea." "Should we tell them? Would it matter?" Vanek considered this. Probably not. Garth joined them, looking more tired than he'd ever been after actual combat. "I've filed my security assessment. Recommendation is to classify human children as potential threat level 7. 7, Vanek blinked. "That's the same level as the Kragoth warbeasts." "Yes. But the warbeasts know they're dangerous. Human children don't, which makes them significantly more unpredictable." "That's actually terrifying logic," Krell admitted. "It's accurate logic." Garth sat down heavily. "I've spent 20 years in security. Faced down pirates, insurgents, hostile first contacts. But watching those small humans play their game, that was the first time I've genuinely questioned whether my species would survive an encounter. It was just soccer, Fennec said, but his voice lacked conviction. Was it though? Or was it something far more concerning, disguised as recreation? Garth shook his head. They're training their young through what they call play, making them tough, fearless, capable of functioning through pain and injury. And they don't even realize they're doing it. Krell pulled up one last image from his recordings. The final score. The muddy, bloody, happy kids holding their trophies. Parents planning next week's game. The galaxy spent 6 months debating whether to allow humans into the council, he said quietly. We worried about their weapons, their military, their tendency toward aggression, but we completely missed the real concern. Which is, Venick asked it. We can negotiate with their military. We can establish protocols with their government. But their culture, the way they raise their young, that's not something we can treaty with. That's just what humans are. They sat in silence for a moment. I'm taking a year off, Venick announced, going to a meditation planet. Somewhere quiet, somewhere without humans. I'm going with you, Garth said immediately. I'll make reservations for 3. Krell added. Baikonur Torres was filing her report. It was short. Observation session completed. Aliens traumatized. No human injuries requiring actual medical attention. Recommend not showing them hockey, football, or any birthday party ever. Also, maybe don't mention summer camp, or tree climbing, or literally anything else kids do. Session concluded. She hit send, closed her laptop, and checked her phone. Her niece's soccer game was in an hour. Some kid was definitely going to get a bloody nose. Someone would probably twist an ankle. There might even be a collision or two. It would be a great game. 3 weeks later, the Galactic Council issued an official statement. Humans were welcome in the galaxy. Their trade was valuable. Their scientific contributions noteworthy. Their diplomatic relations generally positive. However, new regulations were established. Human cultural practices, particularly those involving Jews, were classified as biologically confusing and psychologically hazardous. To non-human observers, mandatory mental health support would be provided to any representatives required to interact with human youth activities. A new entry was added to the Galactic Encyclopedia under humans. Juvenile development. Human offspring are raised through a process their species calls play, which appears to outside observers as voluntary low-level combat training combined with systematic desensitization to pain and injury. This is considered normal and even beneficial to human development. Do not interfere. Do not judge. Do not watch if you value your sanity. They call it building character. We call it incomprehensible. Both statements are accurate. The entry included a footnote. For the love of all that's peaceful in the galaxy, do not ask about hockey. Ambassador Krell never did go back to observe human activities. He retired to a nice quiet planet and took up gardening, growing beautiful flowers that never bled, never collided with each other, and never, ever required ice packs. Sometimes, late at night, he would wake up from dreams of small humans playing in thunderstorms, grinning through injuries that should have required evacuation, cheered on by adults who seemed to find this all perfectly acceptable. He would make himself tea, sit in his garden, and remind himself that he was safe now, far from Earth, far from soccer fields, far from the tiny, terrifying, inexplicable creatures humans called children. But still, sometimes, when he heard thunder, he would flinch and wonder if somewhere, somehow, human kids were playing in it. They probably were. They absolutely were.